All right, welcome to today's video about how to explain, how to present and explain in layman's terms the exclusive right to buy. So we have an exclusive right to buy filled out, and Harry is going to be our buyer. And group, I really want you guys to, if Harry's not asking the question that you have in your mind when we get to that thing, just jump in, ask the question, because if you're thinking it, it's valid. Not all buyers have the same questions. Not all buyers ask not all buyers ask all their questions at the time. So any questions you guys have is going to really, help this video for sure. Harry, you ready?
Ready.
Perfect. So Harry, this is the exclusive right to buy, or what I call the loyalty agreement. This is what causes our working relationship for you and I to work together, so I can go out and show you some homes and get you under contract. You see, a lot of people don't know this, Harry, but when you list a home, a lot of people will expect to sign an agreement with their agent to list their home. Well, it's no different on the buying side of things. You obviously have to sign an agreement to have me help you sign, or have me help you find a home. So that's what we're going to go over today. I call it my loyalty agreement. It's our agreement to work together and work well together. So I do want to go over this in detail with you. And I want to explain some things, and I want you to stop me at any point in time if you have any questions, and we can go from there. So first and foremost, you're going to go ahead.
No, I'm great. I'm ready.
Okay. So first and foremost, you're going to notice there's a lot of black lettering and then some blue lettering. Our contract system, or my contract system, has everything in blue that I've filled out, minus some of these black check boxes, and we'll go through all of that. But we're going to focus primarily on the blue stuff, and I'm going to reiterate what the black paragraphs mean, so that way if you're reading through here, you can make sense of some of it. Okay.
Okay.
Cool. So I've got selected here the buyer's agency checkbox, and let me explain to you the difference between buyer's agency and transaction broker, or transaction brokerage. I'd love to work with a buyer's agency because this has the most fiduciary duty to you, Harry. This would allow me to represent you and negotiate on your behalf and mastermind with you. But better yet, let me explain it this way. You can think of a buyer's agency as I'm your coach in the game. So if we're playing basketball, I'm legitimately your coach. I have the same uniform, the same sideline that you're on, and I can help you mastermind through the different plays and the different things throughout the game. If I were to be a transaction broker, Harry, then I would be the referee in the game. See, I'm not on any one person's side, which means I can't mastermind with you, which means I can't help you negotiate. I can't tell you what I think is right or wrong. I just have to give you the rules of the game. So with your permission, I'd love to be your buyer's agent, so that way I can help.
If you're a transaction broker, you can advise me.
That's correct. I can only share with you the facts. And that's why I'd love your blessing on having me be your buyer's agent.
Yeah, let's go on with buyer's agency.
Okay, great. Well, moving right along, this agreement is between you and I and the brokerage firm. That's really important to know. And to jump right into that, I do hang my license under Keller Williams, which is a multiple person brokerage firm, which is why I have 2.1 selected.
Okay.
Down here in section 3, I'd love for you to take a look at your name and make sure that that's spelled correct in the legal form that you'd like to take.
Does my wife's name need to be on it?
So that's a great question, Harry. Will your wife be on title?
Yes.
Yes. So yes, she does need her name on there. So let me edit this real quick and I will put this on there for you. So Harry, I use a live link system. Okay. And I know that, pretend that Harry's on the other end on his own computer. So I do this in Zoom sometimes, but a lot of times people are on their own computer looking at the same thing I'm looking at. That's why I keep calling out the sections. So Harry, I use a live link system, and it's pretty cool. And let me add your wife's name in here real quick. As soon as I hit save, I want you to go ahead and hit refresh on your end. And because it's a live link, I don't have to email you anything again. It's pretty slick. So if I hit refresh here, then bam, Jane's name should pop up for us. And there she is.
Cool. All right.
Do you see that name?
Yes. Appreciate that.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay. Like I said, I hang my license under a national brokerage firm, which is Keller Williams First Realty and Associates. Here is my full legal name. And then because we haven't yet gone out and looked at properties yet, the contract wants us to kind of describe what we're looking for. I'm just going to put in there to be determined, unless you have any specifics you'd like me to add in there. Great.
Well, but we're not going to go to Wyoming or anything, right?
That's correct. My license is only valid here in the state of Colorado, and these are state mandated contracts. They're not really national contracts.
Okay.
It's just been approved by the state here.
Perfect. Okay.
Yeah, great questions. I guess any questions before we go any further?
Nope. So far, so good.
Okay. So Harry, I know that this is for us to work on the buying side of things, and you're going to notice in this contract they use the word listing a lot. I want to let you know that listing is kind of our terms in real estate that constitute for both buyer and seller side of things. Really, the buying side of things is looked at the sales side of things, and the listing side of things is looked at as basically listing the home. But for the contracts, these are both listing agreements. Do I know why they put it in there like that? I have no idea. But when you see this, don't freak out. This is a buyer's agreement. Listing comes up here a lot, and it's just for the formalities of the contract. All right.
Okay.
So this listing period is basically designating when we're going to be working together in a full-blown contractual capacity. And so I like to make sure that, we have these dates in alignment with your goals. So you were telling me that you were looking to buy a house in the next 3 months, correct?
Correct.
Awesome. So if you notice there, I pretty much just went ahead and put out about, it looks like, I guess I did for about 4.5 months. Do you feel pretty confident we're going to be able to find you a home in the next couple of months before the middle of March?
Why couldn't you just go month to month?
Well, we absolutely could go month to month if you would choose, but there's going to be a lot more paperwork involved in that because, Harry, if we go month to month, I don't know if you know this, but if you remember back in our buyer's consultation, you see contracts can take anywhere between 30 and 45 days, and that's the contract on the house. So you see just one little period of time from when you go under contract on a house to closing would actually cause us to have to redo this anyways. But you do also want some time to look at homes, maybe a couple of weeks. So at the very minimum, I'd like to see at least 3 months on there, because unless you're willing to execute this again, if we do find a property and we need to.
No, that's okay, because I don't have to do it again. But so I can't use another realtor, right? I mean, once this is it.
That's correct. Yeah, Harry, do you feel the need to have 2 different real estate agents working for you?
No, I just wanted to make sure, in case somebody was to call or ask, I want to make sure that,
Yep. That's a great question. Yes, this does bind us together. And when I say bind us together, I really want you to see it as a 2-sided document. You see, this isn't just to keep you from working with other agents. This is really to keep me working for you in the capacity that I need to work for you in, as well as some legalities behind, liabilities at different properties as some things happen. But the reality is this is really based upon me having the ability to work for you. And I'll show you, I love this document because this document really commits me to several different things that you probably haven't even thought of. And we'll look at that in section 5 and 6 here real soon.
Okay, that's good. 3 months is good.
Okay, perfect. I appreciate that. Applicability of terms. What this just says is we are going to abide by these dates. We are going to abide by these terms. So as long as these sections are filled out, these are what apply. It also talks about the computation of period of days. And what that means is if any of these dates would fall on a weekend or holiday, they proceed to the next business day. It's a clause that's in here. It's in all of our contracts, even though there's only 2 dates. It just states that if it did, it would fall on the next business day.
Okay.
All right. So rolling right along, a brokerage relationship. So very similar to what I was talking about earlier was the designation between the buyer's agency as well as the transaction broker. If you read through here, Harry, there's a multitude of different things and different ways that a transaction can happen. For instance, an in-company transaction with different brokers. There will be times that we go out and see a property or go under contract possibly on a property that our office, the same office that I work out of, has. As long as they're not a party to our agreement, or you or myself on the listing side of things, we're perfectly fine to move right along and use them as their agent, no problem asked. And then similar thing with the in-company transaction. If the buyer and seller are both working with the same broker, the broker will function either as a buyer's agent and will treat the seller as a customer, or I would go into the transaction broker piece, like we talked about earlier, where I wouldn't represent both sides. I would represent the contract and the transaction, and both you and the seller would have to make your own decisions, and I wouldn't be able to advise you or mastermind with you on that. So as you can see, there's a huge reason why I want to work with you as a buyer's agent, Terry. If anything would ever pop up, like let's say you have a neighbor who wants to sell their house and you want to buy that house, I would still be working with you most likely as a buyer's agent and treating them as a customer. And we can get down that road way later. I know this is kind of going over your head, but read through here.
So how come we don't check 4.3 then? It sounds like you're telling me you're going to stay as my buyer's agent. What?
Yeah, that's a great question, because there will be some, not will be, to be honest with you, I'm going to find it in a very rare instance. In a very rare instance, there could be a situation in which I would need to be your transaction broker. And here's the situation that comes to mind, Harry. You see, I not only work with you on the buying side of things, I also work with sellers. And let's pretend that I have somebody who I already have the key is relationship, Harry. If I have a relationship with another person who wants me to list their home for sale, and you and I already clearly have a relation even before we even sign this, and we're out looking at some properties and nothing's happening, and all of a sudden, boom, somebody in my database says, hey, Bruce, I want to list my house, and it fits your criteria perfectly. I don't want to be strapped to not be able to sell you that house. Then I would go into a transaction broker relationship should you want to buy that house. Now, Harry, I'm a man of ethics and morals. If that situation comes up and you don't feel comfortable with me being that transaction broker, I will happily find you another agent that will represent you as a buyer's agent, that you can then use them to represent you and then write me an offer on my listing. Okay. And if that goes down that road, I'm happy to release you from that. Or maybe even on the selling side, I can find another agent to possibly sell that home. Again, it's going to be a very odd situation. And, you know, if my best friend wants to list their home, Harry, unfortunately, I don't feel comfortable referring them to another agent. And so if that would make you uncomfortable, I would have to refer you to another agent. I want to make sure you're comfortable.
So cool. If I don't agree on that, that's my out.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. Bingo. Okay, moving right along. So like I said, I have a lot of duties to you. And what I would encourage you to do for the sake of time and for the sake of today, I love the way the contract spells this out. It really, it really makes it a bullet point form. So it's not this big, long, wordy contract about how I'm going to represent you. What it is I'd like you to go ahead and take some time and read through section 5 and 6. And let me know if you have any questions about what it is I should be doing for you. And so we'll move right along for the sake of time. Okay. But if you want to read through that, please read through there and make sure you understand everything that I should be doing for you and ask any questions. Okay. So I'm not going to pause the recording, but I'm going to pause right there, Harry. You guys, that's how I go over section 5 and 6 every single time. I've done it since day one. I don't find, and I've been taught, that there's no need to go line by line by line by line on all of the stuff that you're going to do. It's going to take you so much time to present this, because the meat of your conversation comes right here in section 7. So I still have never to this day explained section 5 and 6. I always encourage them to read through there and ask me questions. All right. So Harry's gone. No, Harry's back. Moving right along, Harry. We got to talk about how I get paid. So I'm not sure if you remember at our buyer's consultation, but like I said, 98% of the time, the seller will pay the entire amount of what is acceptable to me and my business as far as
That's right.
compensation goes.
We
All
talked
right.
about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But remember how I said, 98% of the time, and I said, when time comes and we go over this contract, we're going to talk about those 2% of that time. Well, this is where we're going to talk about it. So my business is ran off of a 2.5% base minimum and up. So what that means is if there's a situation, like I said, less than 2% of the time where the selling side is not willing to pay the full 2.5%, then what I'm going to ask your permission to do is in section 7.3, allow me to select this box here. And what this says is that it looks like you're obligated to pay. What I want you to know, Harry, is that if we get into a for sale by owner situation and the for sale by owners, basically saying, look, I'll pay your fee, but you got to put it in the contract, or maybe it's a discount broker where a listing is paying a flat rate of, say $500 on your behalf, I can actually ask for the 2.5% inside of the contract, which makes it pretty cool. So with your permission, I would love to keep my base pay at 2.5% and up. If you notice through the rest of section 7.1 and 7.2, I don't charge you any hourly fees, admin fees. There's nothing like that. What I say here, Harry, is if I don't close and sell you a home, then there's no reason I should get paid to do anything for you. My job is to get you to the end and the finish line. And it's beyond me to rack up this huge bill for you and never see you get to that finish line. So my business does not charge you a cent. All right. But moving along.
So if I give you permission to put that into a contract that that the seller has to pay the 2.5 for whatever reason, what if they say no?
If they say no, then you and I will have to have a conversation, because at that point, there's just some limitations that I have to do, Harry. So if they say no, and depending upon that situation, if it's a couple $100, I might just revise this and we redo it and we comply. If it's too much of a deficit, Harry, you and I will have to have that uncomfortable conversation about you possibly bringing up the difference. Or maybe it's not the full 2.5%, but if somebody's willing to only pay $500, I can assure you that I can't work for $500. You see, I don't know if you know how this all works, but that 2.5% can look like a large chunk of money. But what I like to do is I like to hold up my 3 fingers here. And I like to tell you that because I'm a self-employed business owner, Uncle Sam's getting their money first. So they're getting a third of everything I take anyways. From there, I have business expenses. I hang my license under a national brokerage firm. I have business expenses such as marketing dollar, gas, you name it, apps, technology, the system that I'm setting up for you in the system I'm setting up for you for your home search called our MLS. There's a lot of dues and subscriptions. So about a third of that contributes to my business expenses. And then lastly, I take about 1/3 home on any given deal. And so the reality is, Harry, if they're not willing to, and you're not willing to, I'm going to go ahead and wash my hands of this transaction. I'm going to tell you to go ahead and work with them, because in my experience, if I work with you for pennies, what happens is I leave all sorts of money on the table. And what I mean by that is if I work in for you for pennies, the reality is all of those hours, I could be generating another lead that then I could be working with to find that full blown. So it would be no hard feelings. I hate to say it, Harry, as much as I've got to know you, I'd love to continue our friendship, but the reality of things is this is a business for me, and I gotta make sure my family's fed. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay.
Perfect. So like I said, less than 2% of the
So
time.
we could renegotiate it if we had to.
And I'm a man of my word on that. And if you really, and so let me pause here, not really pause, but let's pretend, because I've had this happen maybe about 3 times in my career. Most people, those 3 people will say, that's well and good and all, Bruce. So if that's the case, then why don't we just work together and not sign this? Because I thought you said by signing this, I'm obligated to you, which means I'm obligated to then pay, which means if you're not willing to take my word for it, then why would I take your word for it, Bruce? And so right here is where I will say, you know what? That's fantastic. What I'm willing to do for you, and I've done this 3 times. Let me get back over here. What I'm willing to do for you, Harry, is I'm willing to go down here in additional provisions. Buyer and broker understand that if, I'm not going to spell it out, I suck at typing. If the buyer and broker understand that if the buyer should transact on a property in which the broker's compensation cannot be met by buyer, broker is willing to dissolve this contract or rescind this contract or allow the buyer to get out of this contract scot-free without being paid, something like that. I've only been pushed that a couple of different times, and honestly, if I'm truly going to be pushed on that, I might not even put that clause in there. I might simply just put in 7.3. I might just simply change it to this and then just have the discussion go, you know what? It makes sense, Harry. I really want you to trust me. How about this? How about we put is not obligated, but if the situation arises where the house has been on the market, the seller is willing to pay the commission as long as I put it in the contract, I can't put it in the contract unless we check this box. So if I'm willing to do this for you, would you be willing to do that for me if that situation arises? So sometimes I go that route. Then lastly, Harry, oh, go ahead.
No, good.
Harry, really good point. I really appreciate you bringing this up. So what Harry just told me, for everybody on the video, Harry just said, hey, Bruce, while you were talking to me about section 2.5, I just got done reading section 7113, and that scares me. Bruce, can you explain that any further? Well, absolutely, Harry. I certainly can. You see this section here, and I really want the class to read this. So let's read it aloud. The success fee is earned by the brokerage firm upon the purchase of the property and is payable upon closing of the transaction. If any transaction fails to close as a result of the seller's default with no fault of the buyer, the success fee will be waived. If any transaction fails to close as a result of the buyer's default in whole or in part, the success fee will not be waived, and such fee is payable to the buyer, payable upon buyer's default, no later than the date that the closing of the transaction was have to occurred. I've went rounds with this with attorneys as well as managing brokers, and yeah, if the buyer basically chooses just to vacate it, like because if the buyers choose to leave the contract because of a family emergency and there's a hospital bill and they just can't buy a home, section 7113 would constitute them being in default and would allow me to go after them for a commission. When you have people that read that clause, it can get a little hairy and a little scary for them. You guys, for my business, unless it's I think I've calculated, and if it's more than almost a $2 million property, which is about a $60K commission, that's about the only time I would ever find it worthwhile, financially as well as time and headache wise, to go after a buyer who is in default. And the other thing is like I said, I went rounds with this with attorneys and managing brokers. If you're going to sue somebody for their commission and they stand up in a court of law and say, look, I had a family emergency. Here's the medical bill I paid off. I could not buy the house. I have to imagine, you guys, that the lawyer or the judge is going to look at you as the broker and call you a scumbag. I don't really know if they would absolutely award that in a situation, because I think that if the buyer claimed a hardship, it would be dismissed and you'd have all those attorney fees anyways.
Yeah,
not an attorney, but
you can go down another road. Let's say you've spent the last 6 months marketing yourself and spending X amount of dollars to market yourself, and now you have this buyer who had an unfortunate situation. He's now going to tell everybody he knows that you're just a scumbag.
Mhm.
And guess what's going to happen to all your marketing efforts? They're gone because everybody's going to remember Bruce as being the scumbag. So did you win or did you lose?
Exactly. And I want you guys to also know for the video, you have the right to go after them for a
Yeah,
commission.
you do.
You absolutely do. I'm not saying that. I'm saying define your business. But when I have a buyer who brings this section up, I will simply go down to additional provisions.
Look, while he's writing that, think about this for a second. How many times you go to a restaurant and something doesn't work out right and they give you the free meal? You feel pretty darn good about it. And you'll tell other people that they took care of you. It's the same situation. Is what's your long-term business want? What do you want it to look like? And if that one deal is going to affect that long-term business, is it worth it?
Hey, Harry.
Sure.
Harry, I'm gonna have Zach Burt jump in as the buyer. We have one of our partners who is I think he's at a walkthrough right now, and he's blowing
Right.
me up. I'm gonna
Send it
send
to
you with
me.
his contact info if you
All right.
could
I'm
give him
getting
a
off.
call. All right, thanks. You don't have to get off, but all right, whatever. Okay, sorry about that, guys. I cannot stand leaving any one of you guys hanging. We have a buyer or a PC partner who is at a walkthrough and closing right now, and I want to make sure he's taken care of. Zach, I appreciate you let me pick on you. I know you'll be a good sport about it. So if somebody rises and has an issue with 7113, it's a scary thing for the buyer. My business will let that buyer out of that clause, and I just simply put in additional provisions. Buyer and broker understand that section 7113 shall not apply. It's your right. You can leave it in there. You can fight and argue and keep it in there. You can charge and sue your buyers. I just wanted to point that out. My business does not do that. Any questions on 7, Zach?
7.
7, yeah.
So I noticed you added.
That.
Yeah, I noticed on 7.4 you added a holdover period.
Yeah.
So is that just because you don't trust that I'll follow through with my end of the deal? Why did you add a time frame there?
Yeah, because in certain situations, it's not necessarily about the trust. What it is, it's about both. It's about some of the trust, but better yet, it's about how much effort and time I put into my business and you yourself. So what this is saying is, if you were to just use and abuse me to go see a bunch of homes and then wait for this contract to expire and then want to go under contract with, let's say you have a brother or a nephew who is an agent and you want them to get the commission off of all of the work that I put in because you didn't maybe trust them or didn't know they were an agent at that time. This would allow me to basically say, look, I put in this effort, we had a relationship, and you were just using the contract and waiting for it to expire to then use another broker. So it's a trust thing. I don't see it happening. Do you?
No.
Okay, great. Yeah, so that's all it is right there. It just basically says that after 60 days after this contract ends, if you were to contract and go under and close on a property that I was what they call, quote unquote, the procuring cause of, then I would have the right to ask you for a commission.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Limitation on third-party compensation. So as we talked in the buyers, as we talked in our buyers consultation together a couple weeks ago or whenever we had it, limitation on third-party compensation. So what this means is that throughout the contract and throughout this period of me working with you, I'm going to recommend different service providers that I know get the job done, such as, the lender that you're working with. I'm pretty sure that I gave you their name and number. The title company that we could be working with, the inspector that we could be working with. if I refer you people in this business, Zach, what I want you to know is that it's illegal for me to accept any sort of compensation or kickbacks from those people. And so that's where I want to commit to you that the people that I'm referring you to, that's just because they're good at what they do and they get the job done, not because they make my wallet happier.
Okay.
Cool. Buyer's obligation to broker. Like I said, if you look at section 5 and 6, I have a lot of obligations to you. So a lot of people think that this document is 100% just like, making you commit to me all ways, shape, and form. It's a mutual document. Section 5 and 6, I've got a lot of different things that I'm going to commit to you for. But section 9 is where you're going to commit some things to me. So first and foremost, are you right now a party to any other agreement with any other broker?
No, I'm not.
Okay, so I'm going to put is not. And then are you working with any other agents, maybe not in a contractual form, but is any other agent sending you any sort of properties?
Yeah, I was on Zillow and a few other websites, and I had 3 or 4 different agents send me a few listings.
Gotcha. Well, if you're willing to work with me and you're happy with the services that I know I'm going to provide for you, before you execute this, or I would say, shortly after you execute this, you are committing to me that you're not going to be receiving any more properties from them. So if you could do me a favor and unsubscribe from their list or reach out to them, and let them know what you're doing. And if that makes you uncomfortable, Zach, I am happy to take that burden off your plate. All you would need to do is send me a text or an email with the agents' names and phone numbers who are sending you listings. And I'd be happy to let them know that you and I are in a relationship now and that they should stop sending those to you. Because then if they continue, they'll be at a breach of their duties as a licensed agent. So I'm happy to do that if you are, or if you don't feel comfortable unsubscribing from their list.
Yeah, I'd really appreciate that. No one likes sending out that breakup text, so that'd be really great.
No one does, my friend. And, I've been doing this so long that it'd be hard pressed to see another agent just be absolutely hurt. It happens to the best of us. I've done it before, and I just release them. I want people to be with who they want to be with. They need to work with who they need to work with because we are helping the general public. So I'm happy to do that for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. All right. Section 10. This is the party's right to cancel. So again, this is between both of us. If I'm not doing my job, Zach, I want you to fire me, because the reality is if I'm not doing my job, I'm not helping the public. And that's exactly what I just told you I'm here to do. So if I'm not doing my job or sticking and abiding to sections 5 and 6 of this contract, please send me a text, shoot me an email. It does need to be in writing. Maybe leave me a voicemail if you want, and saying that you need to dissolve this contract with me. And if you'd like, I'd love some feedback about why. So let me know what kind of bullet point I actually am not fulfilling. So that way I kind of document it and can work on doing better for sure. And vice versa. So section 10.2, it gives me the right to cancel this contract too. And I really want to take a second and read that with you. Brokerage firm may cancel this buyer's listing agreement upon written notice. Again, I'd have to do the same thing, text message, email. Upon written notice to buyer, if the buyer fails to reasonably cooperate with broker, or the buyer defaults under this buyer's listing contract, any rights of the brokerage firm that occurred prior to the cancellation will survive such cancellation. So I want to stop right there where it says reasonably cooperate with broker. You see, in the world of real estate, I'm not sure if you've heard this, but there's no such thing as a real estate emergency. Right? An emergency is something that's a health and safety concern with somebody's, well-being. In real estate, a real estate emergency usually is not necessarily a emergency. Meaning, if you consistently wait until the last minute for me to go show you homes, and I can't consistently get our showings in, and you get frustrated with me, that would be an unreasonable expectation around me. I do need some time. We need to give the sellers some availability to get into a property. And so you're going to get frustrated and I'm going to get frustrated. And so as long as we're on the same page, I don't see this reasonable cooperation coming into play, but I do want you to know that there is that right there. And so if I find that you're just using and abusing me, if you're just using me to show property and have a plan to go work with your nephew, I will have the right to cancel this contract as well. So we both have the rights. That's what I love about this contract. By you and I signing this, we have so many rights with each other that's why I call it a loyalty agreement. It's just an agreement for us to work together, Zach. So if you have any questions, I need you to know that you have that right. If I'm not doing my job, get rid of me, man. Fire me. I'm done, because I need you to be working with who you need to be working with.
Okay, well, speaking to that, it says abandonment of buyer. What's the time period on that? Like I told you, I'm a first-time home buyer, really anxious. Is it one missed phone call? Is I can only cancel if you ignore me for a month? What's that look like?
That's great. That's a great question. It's open to interpretation. So if I miss one phone call from you and that's not what you reasonably expect out of your agent, get rid of me.
Okay.
Yep. That's why that clause is up to interpretation on both fronts. Like, what is reasonably cooperate, right? What does abandonment mean? And that's going to be your opinion, and I can't go against your opinion, and I know a court of law will go with your opinion. So get rid of me, for sure.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think I'll do that after one missed phone call, so no need to worry about that.
I appreciate that, and I don't see the same, but it's a good question, and I like where you went with that extreme, because I need to know how you operate, and you need to know how I operate.
Okay, awesome, thanks.
I need to charge my iPad. It's not working.
I'll do it here after I'm done.
Okay.
All right. Cost of services or products obtained from outside sources. A broker will not obtain or order products or services from outside sources unless the buyer has agreed to pay for them when due. So what I always tell people in this situation, Zach, is when we do any sort of thing where you're going to be paying for anything, I would love for you to initiate and get that going. And the reason why is because it basically says it right there. Broker will not obtain or order products or services from outside sources unless the buyer has agreed to pay. I can't commit to you paying to something. So when it comes down to scheduling our inspection, I'm going to ask you to call the inspector and initiate or engage his services. I will then use and help the inspector coordinate the time and date for the appointment, but you'll be the ones hiring that inspector. So that's about all that you'll be hiring, if you will, besides the title company. So if you ever want to talk to the title company or a surveyor or an inspector, anybody that has to do with this part of the contract that you in which would be paying for their services, I'm going to ask you to engage their services.
Okay.
All right, sweet. Section 12, broker services, showing properties. There's nothing that I necessarily put in here. I find that section 5 and 6 is pretty adequate. If there's anything that you read through section 5 and 6 that's not in there that you'd like to see, I'm happy to discuss that with you and put that in there. So definitely let me know around that. Disclosure of buyer's identity. This can scare people, Zach. To be honest with you, this says that I'm going to basically disclose your identity to third parties without prior written consent. The reality is those third parties, Zach, are our inspector, our lender, our title company. Third parties really is designated as a party to the transaction or file. So do I have your permission to basically continue the contract and share your information with the title company? Because honestly, Zach, they're going to need it for the title work.
Yeah, of course. But so does that only apply to the title company or the inspector, or is this also going to be for advertising that you may do in the future? So this is just for third party?
Yeah, so this is for third parties appropriate to the transaction or file. As far as marketing and whatnot later, if I ever post a Facebook video or a picture of you closing in front of your house, and before I do that, I've got to get your written consent to do so. So it's a little different on that front. This is third parties to the transaction and not necessarily marketing. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, good questions, man. I really appreciate that. Disclosure of settlement service costs. So anybody that I recommend to you, that's why your lender had to send you a cost estimate or a breakdown of closing costs. That's why the title company, before we close, has to send you a settlement service or a settlement disclosure. The inspector, on the phone, if you ask, what is the price of my inspection? The inspector has to figure out a way to get you a price. They might ask you the square footage of the home and the bedrooms and the baths and where it is, but they will disclose to you and have to disclose to you what those service costs are. And that's all the only people I work with. So you're well taken care of on my vendor list for sure.
Okay.
Wire and other frauds. There's frauds that can happen. I want you to be hyperactive with me and the lender. If you see something come through from an email that doesn't look right and doesn't look like my wording, doesn't look like me, I need you to call, pick up the phone and validate that that's my email. Same thing with the title company and same thing with the lender. You see, there's a lot of wire fraud going on, Zach, and I never wanted to put anybody in that situation, buyer or seller. So I need you to know that that's there. Never, ever, ever supply me with your social security number, bank account. That all has to go through the lender, and most likely they're going to be using a secure portal for that. So just be careful with your sensitive information. It's kind of just a disclosure that I love to have, and I love that's in our contracts because it happens, and it happens unfortunately through the client's kind of oversight. I hate to say it, but call me, blow me up, ask me if I send you 20 emails throughout this conversation or throughout this transaction, and you call me 20 times validating that those are my emails, I'm okay with it. Awesome. Removal of marketing material. I know we don't have too many people on this video that were here last year, but this is new as well. Buyer acknowledges that marketing material used by the seller and the seller's broker, videos, photos, etc., may be difficult, if not impossible, to remove from syndicators, as the internet releases the broker from any liability or broker's inability to remove that information. So Zach, it's really important that if you're looking to buy a house and you're seeing the home on the computer through different photos and different things of that nature, this is where it discloses to you that if you ever would want those removed, you can ask me, but I'm telling you, it's very difficult to get them removed. I have a trick that I like to use, but if that comes, I just want you to know that it's out there and it will be out there for a while. I have some tricks, but if you're concerned with that, then we really need to buy something off market.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think that'd be a problem. I'm not that private about where I live. It's going to be just photos of an empty house, right?
Well, it could be an empty house. It could be the seller that has furnishings in there, which again, they won't be your furnishings. Yeah. So yeah, you're right. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I'm gonna pause there. We're not gonna role play for a second. This is more talking to the group. So I just had a buyer last year. So this clause was not in this contract last year. I had a buyer who called me up after the fact and said, Bruce, I need you. I'm a very private individual. I already have Google removed me from the Google Maps. So if you guys are ever on Google Maps like Street View and you see a blurred out house, you can actually call into Zillow to blur out your house. Celebrities, if you go to Beverly Hills and you go to Hollywood and you go on a Street View, a lot of houses are blurred out in Hollywood because they don't want people to just be able to look up celebrities and different things. So they can do that. This now finally discloses this. So my buyer last year was absolutely irate. I've never had this happen. I mean, they were so pissed off at me because they felt like I wasn't putting the effort into getting rid of their listing photos. I was calling Zillow, I was calling the MLS, I wasn't getting anywhere. And I finally found an article online. So here's what you guys do. If you have a buyer who's sensitive about that, before the house closes, you need to get with the listing agent. And as the house is under contract as a pending or backup status, you need to remove the seller's agent has to be willing to remove all photos and all videos, like walkthrough videos, off of the MLS, hit save, and that needs to be done approximately 3 or more days before closing. Then what it will do is as Zillow pulls from the MLS, they don't realize it, but what they do is they pull that listing, and if the old listing that they pulled had photos, the new listing will trump it, and it will delete the photos off the web. So, but it needs time to syndicate. So there's my tip for you guys. I don't talk to a buyer about it because I don't want to scare them, and I don't want to be requested to do that every single transaction. I just say I have a trick, but that's the trick. So if you ever have a buyer, you guys ever run into that, just remove all marketing material from the web. If, you know, a lot of listing agents won't do it until you're through every contingency. So a lot of times they will only do it about 3 days before closing because they're pretty darn sure you're closing with them. Because there's a lot of work on their end to then upload it all again, wait another 3 days for it to syndicate to all 30-party websites, just get the photos back online. So that way they start showings again. So that's the trick to get around that. And that's why they say it may be difficult, if not impossible. I have found that it's impossible once that MLS is marked as sold and closed. All right, back to role playing here. Any, I guess while we're paused, any questions so far, guys?
A lot of good stuff.
Good. All right, non-discrimination. Obviously, I can't discriminate. Please read through there. If you have any questions on non-discrimination, you know, let me know. But if you ask me, my biggest thing, Zach, is if you ask me, you know, what the crime rate is in a neighborhood, I'm going to direct you to the city website to make that determination. Same thing with schools ratings. You see, the school ratings are more opinion based. I can't discriminate. I can't tell you that there's a bad school zone and there's a good school zone. That's all up for your interpretation. I've got plenty of resources I can send you, but any questions on non-discrimination?
No,
Good.
seems pretty straightforward.
Cool. Recommendation of legal and tax counsel. You see, I'm a licensed real estate agent in the state of Colorado, which means I can practice limited law. Limited law is these contracts here. I didn't create these, which is very limited. So these aren't my clauses. What this says, Zach, is that these are not proprietary to just you and I. You have, and I recommend you take this to an attorney, take this to a tax advisor, make sure you know and understand this contract. If there's anything that I said that you just don't understand and that we can't get to ground on, take this somewhere and have them review it and have them ask me questions. No problem. No problems there.
Okay.
Mediation. This just basically states that if you and I should start to get into a tiff and, you know, you want me to release you from this contract, I don't want you to, whatever that little tiff is, instead of going into the court of law, we would start with mediation first. All right. Attorney fees. In the event that you do have an attorney review this, or in the instance that we do go into mediation over a tiff, this is stating that the arbitrator or court must award the prevailing party all reasonable costs and expenses, including attorney and legal fees. So if you hire an attorney to review this contract, those fees will be on you. If we go into mediation and you win, those fees will be on me most likely.
Okay.
All right. We already talked about additional provisions. I put that section in there for you to delete section 713. Additional provisions just somewhere where we can basically put in some other terms and anything else. So if you think of anything, I'm happy to discuss that with you.
Okay.
No attachments to this contract. We're going to kind of cruise along here for the end. 23 just states that we can sign electronically. Section 24 is choice of law. I like to read this one. The buyer listing contract and all disputes arising here under are governed by and construed in accordance with the laws of the state of Colorado. I really like this one because I need you to know that this is a Colorado contract and not just something I whipped up on Microsoft Word.
Okay.
Modification of the contract. Once this is signed by both you and I, this is enforceable and it's considered executed. Modification of this would have to have both of our agreements, meaning we would do an amendment to the contract and both sign. And that's about the only way we can modify this contract, is we both have written agreement upon whatever we're modifying. All right. Counterparts. This buyer listing contract may be executed by each party separately. And if it's executed separately by each parties, each copy taken together are deemed one. So let's pretend that I sign electronically and you print off a version that doesn't have my signature on it. Then I'm going to be done in a little bit. I'm starting to get frustrated. Thank you. Sorry. If you were to print off this document without my signature and sign, and I had mine signed electronically, we could just pair up both documents and that would be mutually executed. That's all counterpart means.
Okay.
So by signing this, you're signing and we agree to this, this entire agreement. It's pretty simple there. A copy of this contract. So you have a copy in your email. As soon as we both sign, it's a live link and you will get notification and have a signed copy. If you ever lose it, just reach out to me. I got to save this stuff for years. Megan's Law, similar to crime rates and non-discrimination. I don't know why Megan's Law isn't, up above here in discrimination part, but registered sex offenders is a big thing for people. And if you ever need to know about that, I can send you some links to different cities that will show you where registered sex offenders live.
Okay.
Whew. I appreciate you bearing with me on this. Any questions on the contract?
Just one last one. I think it probably applies to section 24. Earlier you had mentioned in case we need to extend how long we're working together or shorten the time frame. Is that where that comes into play, the modification?
Bingo. You catch on quick, my friend. That's exactly what that means. That would be a modification to this contract. Since the contract that we execute has certain dates, if we need to change those, that's a modification. Yep. Anything that we need to change is a modification.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Besides that, seems pretty straightforward for the most part.
Great. Here's a pen, sign here, press hard, 3 copies.
All right.
All right, guys. Any questions?
So this one's kind of off topic, but it's kind of on topic. I do have one on the, and I closed it. The exclusive right to buy and the disclosure. We don't need to do both. Is that correct? If you're getting exclusive right to buy, if that's your initial consultation with your client, you only need to do the exclusive right to buy. Is that correct? Or do you have to do the disclosure as well if you don't have the exclusive right to buy signed at that time? Perfect,
Matt. I appreciate you bringing that up. So there's a multitude of rules of thumb. First, we got to get I want to make sure everybody's on the same page. So for the video, I am going to open up what he's talking about here. It's not just like the buyer advisory and the COVID advisory. What Matt's talking about is the brokerage disclosure. Brokerage disclosure. So here's what's called a brokerage disclosure, or what I call working definitions of basically spelling out what the buyer's exclusive right to buy says. What this says is, or what this really is for and how you should be using it, is when you are engaging with a buyer. So how do I put this? My rule of thumb for this is you need to send this to your buyer, selecting how you are intending to work with them. If they refuse to sign your buyer's agreement, if at your first meeting you present to them the exclusive right to buy and they sign it, you will not need this. If you present to them at the time of your consult and you can't get them to sign an exclusive right to buy, you should be going back to your office, putting this together and sending this over to them with a little blurb that says, hey, look, I know that, we're still looking at, reviewing that exclusive right to buy. To comply with stuff at my office, I need to send this to you so that way you have a bigger definition of what I'm looking to accomplish with you. And that's where you would fill this out and you would select how you're doing this. So I work with a multiple person firm. I'm treating my buyer as whatever. So that's that on the side of basically a refusal to execute an agreement with you.
Or Or if you've decided to take somebody out on an open house for the first time, that under no obligation, you should still send that.
That's what I was just about to say too. There are those one-off times, and the best, I guess, example is what Harry just brought up. I love that you led into that. If you're at an open house and you meet, so you at an open house, let's say it's your listing, you meet a buyer at that open house, and let's say that in order to get them to, engage with you, you say, hey, once I pack up this open house, I would love to take you out and see some of the other houses that you have that aren't having open houses. But I'm going to have to send you a document so that way you understand kind of what it is that I do and how I can work with you. And then you fill this out, send it to them, and then you can apply there as well. And then you can go out and basically help them go look at some different places. Lastly, the other way that you're going to use this is, let's go back to that situation where you have an exclusive right to buy with the buyer, and they find an off-market property, or you find an off-market property. The seller doesn't have if the seller doesn't have a representative and you're not going into a transaction broker and you need to treat that seller as a customer, then you're going to fill this out, multiple person firm, and select customer, and that you're working as the whatever agent, right? That is there to show the seller that you're working with them as a customer, and that it discloses to them without you having to explain that you're not going to be their advocate. That's another big one, or that's the primary use of this, in my opinion. This, out of my experience, I've used this more often on for sale by owners and off-market properties, which then would constitute usually as a for sale by owner. The other way that I have used it, and I think I've only used it once this way, is when I have the listing, I'm working with the seller as a seller's agent only, and a buyer walks into the open house unrepresented and wants to buy the house. And if I already have that relationship with my seller, you are not, a couple years ago, they were saying, yeah, if you have the relationship with your seller, you have somebody walk into your open house, you can just go into a transaction broker and just help the contract. Now, if you have a relationship with that seller and you are working with them and have an agency agreement with them, the first thing that you should do is get that buyer that comes in that wants to buy unrepresented, this working definitions, and treat them as a customer. That is the new rule of thumb. No matter what you've heard in the past, if you have the listing, you do the open house, buyer wants to buy it unrepresented, you either refer them to another agent or you treat them as a customer. Usually you're going to treat them as a customer because usually you're going to make a healthy commission, or reduce the seller's commission and still make a healthy commission.
Or you call somebody quickly and say, I'll give you a 50-50 split or 75-25. You don't have to do much.
Mm-hmm. Questions? This was fantastic. This was a lot of good questions, a lot of good back and forth.
So in a real life situation, how often do you get that much time to go through this with a client?
So if you know the disc profile, there's only about a quarter of the time that you're going to go through every single thing that I just went through.
Okay.
With a high D, so when I have a high D type of client, this is literally how I go through this. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but I just want to show you guys. That was the extended version. That's a really good question, Anne. That was the extended version. I do not do that every single time. I say, hey, would you guys like the Reader's Digest version? Would you guys like to go through line by line? Or would you guys just like to focus on the blue stuff? And high Ds will typically say Reader's Digest version. And then I'll say, great, I'm working with you as a buyer's agency, which means I have your best interest in mind. I do hang my license under Keller Williams, which is a multiple person firm. Could you check your name for me real quick? Great. We're going to make sure that this contract lasts as long as you guys want to take a look. I have out there until March 18th If you want to take a look here at section 5 and 6, that's all the brokerage duties and everything that I should be doing for you. Section 7 says that I'm going to be asking the sellers to pay me 2.5% and up. If they're not willing to, then we'll have to get into another discussion. And then section 731, if those sellers aren't willing to pay, I'm going to have you be obligated to pay. So that way I can ask the seller to pay my commission. Do you have any questions on that? And then they might have a question right there. Even high Ds might have a question right there. I'll say, because you're obligated, it means that I can ask in the contract because it's on your behalf at that point. If they're not willing to, I'm happy to go ahead and, you know, get rid of this and we'll work through it. I don't even go over holdover period. I say limitation on third-party compensation. I just say, I can't get paid by referring you to anyone in this contract. You're not working with another agent, correct? You do have the right to cancel this contract with me. So read through section 10. If I'm not doing my job, go ahead and cancel with me. Cost of services or outside sources. You do have to pay for the third-party vendors that you hire to help us with this contract, such as you know, your inspector. I can't discriminate. You do have the right to have an attorney review this contract with you, and we can sign electronically. That's about it. You can read through some of the other things that we glossed over.
Yeah, and I would tell you that if you know you're dealing with a high D, have practice how you would present a high D, because Bruce is right. 15 minutes is about max, right?
I mean, I just did it in 4 probably, right?
And if you've got
I'm a high D, and
if you have an engine,
and I've had to do it to a high D.
if you have an engineer type, I strongly suggest you send it ahead of time and tell them to read it before you get there. Because if you don't, that half an hour could turn into an hour and a half.
So it seems to be the reality, at least by me and other new agents, please pipe in, that you're kind of, everything goes so quickly and there typically isn't all of this time. I mean, it'd be great if it wasn't, if there were this time, but I'm typically just sending it over on DocuSign because we're so busy looking at houses, and with COVID, we're not sitting in an office or meeting for coffee. And they won't take the time to do Zoom. It's always, hey, just send it over and I'll sign it. And I'm able to
perfect. Send me that shit in writing.
Okay, good. Because I was like sitting there going, shit, every one of my clients is like, I'm explaining to them and they're just like, send it over, I'll sign it. I'm like, okay.
You know, that's fine. But if there's anything that you think might be a question, like how you're going to be compensated, I would at least go over that quickly. Say, just want to make sure you understand 7.1 before I send it. And that way you're comfortable with when they said they're going to sign it, you can always say, I went over it with them. On that
my last buyer, I went through it with them before they signed it. I mean, again, super quickly. But they were super surprised that the listing agent, that the buyer doesn't always pay the agent, that the listing agent did.
I'm telling you, the general public doesn't know how this operates.
They have no idea.
They have no clue. So with that being said, Ann, here's how my practical application goes. I will basically have this thing prepared, try and present it at the buyer's consultation. I send it to them through an email and I say, hey, look, if you, I know you spilled something, dropped something, I heard it shatter. I'll be down in a minute.
It didn't shatter, I spilled the cartwhere's water.
Fantastic. I will basically just, I'll say, hey, I'm going to send it over to you guys for review. If you guys have any questions, make sure you don't sign it without everything being answered. I am happy to, if you want to, I'm happy to give you the Reader's Digest version. I'm happy to go over line by line or go over the blue stuff. And most of the time people just sign it.
And I have told people too, please have your attorneys look at it too.
The key is you need to explain that through writing. You cannot just say over the phone, I'm going to do this, please read it and sign it and review it and do all of that, because then they can come back and say, well, my agent didn't even go over it with me. You need to have proof that you gave them every opportunity to do so.
So you send them an email that you're going to send it and then you send it through DocuSign? Or do you know what I mean? That
Ann,
gets,
okay, Ann, you have a buyer, you have an
Yeah.
exclusive right to buy.
yeah.
Okay, you're gonna send them the DocuSign. Can you or
Yeah.
can you not type a little blurb in the DocuSign?
Well, that's what I'm
email?
saying. Okay, yes, okay.
Okay.
Thank you. I thought you were talking about a separate email and I'm like,
No, same document. Same email's gonna have the document in it for DocuSign. You can put it in there. I also like to say, this document's so you can hire me,
yeah.
right? I want you to hire me.
And I want to
Sean
be loyal to you.
Sean Carpenter over at Fort Collins, that's her out, is she takes you once free and then she says, you know, I've showed you what I can do. Now I want you to hire me as your agent. And this document allows you to hire me as your agent.
Any questions?
Nope.